Module 10, Parallel Translation Corpus, Part 2. In this module, we will further discuss or exemplify the process of text alignment in a parallel translation corpus, also discuss the methods of text analysis, propose for restructuring the translation units, define the process of extractions of translational equivalence, and propose a generation of a bilingual lexical database and term bank from a structured parallel translation corpus. And finally, identify the areas where a parallel translation corpus and information extracted from it may be directly utilized. Since the constructions of a parallel translation corpus in Indian languages is full of hurdles, the methodology, the strategies, the policies we propose here actually giving us a roadmap to focus on the techniques we need to adopt to achieve this task. The first thing here, the alignment of texts in parallel translation corpus. Aligning texts in a parallel translation corpus means making each translation unit of the source language correspond to an equivalent unit in the target language. Thus, a translational unit or translation unit covers small units like words, phrases, and sentences, as well as large units like paragraphs and chapters. However, the selection of translation units depends largely on the point of view selected for linguistic analysis and the type of corpus used for this purpose. If a parallel translation corpus asks for a high level of faithfulness to original, as it happens in cases of legal and technical texts, close alignment between sentences, phrases, or even words becomes mandatory. In cases of non-technical texts, such as novels or fiction, alignment at larger units at paragraph level or at chapter level will suffice the requirement. Therefore, operation of alignment may be refined based on the type of corpus used in the task. The faithfulness and linearity of human translation may guide us to align a parallel translation corpus, although it is predominantly true for the technical corpus. Literary parallel translation corpus, on the other hand, lends itself to reliable alignment of units beyond the sentence level if translation equivalency observed in a parallel translation corpus is previously formalized. Sentence level alignment is an important part of a translation alignment scheme. It shows correspondences down to the level of sentence and not beyond that. For this work, a weak translation model serves our purpose, since this is one of the primary tools that required at the initial stage for parallel translation corpus analysis. We have given here some examples how sentences in Hindi and Bangla are aligned. So while alignment is being done in the parallel corpus, translation corpus, we find that alignment of a translation corpus helps to optimize the mapping between two equivalent units in order to obtain better translation outputs. Usually, it involves associating lexical units such as words, multi-word units, idioms, phrases, clauses, and sentences endowed with typical formal structures. However, The basic purpose of this process of alignment is to allow pairing mechanism to be broken into following three parts in a very systematic way. Number one, identifications of potential linguistic units which may be grammatically associated with in a parallel translation corpus. Number two, formalization of structures of associable units by way of using a morphosyntactic tags. Number three, determination of probability of proposed structures comparing the forms with effective texts collected from manually translated corpus. So what happens? Analysis of type constructions rather than full tokens in a parallel translation corpus can serve our purposes, because in a language there are units which are identical in form and sense. That means NP in the source language may correspond structurally to many other MPs available in the language within the text. This is also true to both source language and the target language. Second, sequence and interrelation between the units in the target language text may be the same with those of the source language text at particular point in the parallel translation corpus, when the parallel translation corpus is developed between two sister languages. Third, there are certain fixed referent points in text like numbers, dates, proper names, titles, paragraphs, sections, which mark out text and allow us for rapid identifications of translation units. So, alignment is an important part and it's a very highly complicated task. This is done because to make the corpus much more usable both by man and machine. So, the impetus for alignment must come from both linguistic and extralinguistic sources. Since it is a highly specialized task, unlike most others, it is a worthy test bed for various theories and applications of linguistics and language technology. So, the people who are well trained in dealing with translation corpus may be asked to align the texts in the parallel translation corpus. Next important issue is the analysis of parallel translation corpus. A parallel translation corpus analysis has three important goals. First, to structure those translations in such a way that these are usable in production of new translations. We can mark out the bilingual correspondences between the source language and the target language texts. Second, to draft translations to detect translation error if any, in a parallel translation corpus. It is possible to certify that a translation is complete in the sense that larger units, pages and paragraphs and sections of the source language text are properly translated in the target language texts. Last, to verify if any translation is free from interference error resulted from deceptive cognates. For instance, we know that the Hindi word sandesh and means news, while in Bangla word sandesh means a kind of sweet, cannot be treated or accepted as good cognates for mutual translation, although they appear similar in form in the two languages. Similarly, the Hindi word khun and the Bangla word khun should not be treated as identical, because while the Hindi word means blood in the basic sense of the term, Bangla word refers to murder, although both of them somehow related to death or murder. A parallel translation corpus, once it is aligned, is now ready for linguistic analysis. In general, it involves four major tasks. Number one is morphological analysis. Here we try to identify the form and functions of the constituting morphemes. Number two is the syntactic analysis, where we try to identify the form and functions of syntagms in respective corpora. Morphosyntactic analysis, where we try to identify the interface involved in surface forms of lexical items used in a parallel translation corpus. And number four is semantic analysis, where we try to identify the meaning of linguistic units which are used, as well as the ambiguities involved therein. After translation analysis, we come with three different outcomes. There is situations where there is a strong match, where the number of words and their order, their meaning are same both in the source language as well as in the target language. Then we come across the approximate match, where the number of words and their meanings are same, but not the order in which they appear in the texts. Then we come across the situations of weak match, where the order and number of words are different, but the dictionary meanings are same. So this kind of variations are also available after analysis. So while analyzing a parallel translation corpus, we have to keep in mind that these kinds of possible outputs may be generated from it. So one has to be careful to collecting those matches properly after the analysis. The next issue comes is the restructuring the translation units. Restructuring a sentence of the source text with that of a target text is a complex task, because it is an attempt to maximize all linguistic resources, strategies, and methods deployed in manual translation, so that in cases of languages which exhibit close typological, grammatical, and semantic similarities due to their genealogical linkage, restructuring of translational units is quite easy. Since both the languages belong to the same language family, to a large extent, it becomes an easy task for us to restructure those sentences between two language corpora by using the lexicogrammatical stock of both the languages. Also, the linguistic knowledge base and information obtained from this kind of experiment can help us to design a good machine-aided translation mechanism between the target languages. So we have given here some examples how some Hindi sentences are restructured while being translated to Bangla, and how the translation in Bangla also restructured to match maximally with the sentences taken from the source language. The important thing is that grammatical mapping is highly relevant in the contexts of translation between the two languages, which are different in word order in sentence formation. If we think in the present context that we are trying to translate some English texts into Bangla and have that analysis, mapping, reordering of the structures of the sentences, we definitely need to take care maximum attention so that they are properly structured for machine learning. The next issue comes extractions of translational units from the parallel translation concept. The search for translational equivalent units in the parallel translation corpus begins with a particular forms that express similar sense in both the languages. Once these are identified in the parallel translation corpus, these are stored in a separate lexical database. Normally, a parallel translation corpus yields large amount of translational equivalent units, which are good to be used as alternative forms. The issues that determine the choice of appropriate equivalent form are measured on the basis of the recurrent patterns of use of the forms in the corpora. The translational units are verified also with monolingual corpora of the two respective languages from which the parallel translation corpora is made. So, here is an example given how the parallel translation units can be retrieved from the corpus. There are certain factors, certain issues that has to be kept in mind. In general, when we extract the translational units from a parallel translation corpus, we have to keep in mind what are the things we are going to expect and how they are going to be utilized in future. We have to keep in mind that we must extract good translational units, which are include words, idioms, compounds, collocations, and phrases. Also, we need to learn how these translational units can be used to show their naturalness in translation. We need to create a new translation databases that will enable us to translate correctly into the languages on which we have only limited account. We also need to generate a bilingual lexical database for both machine learning and language translation. Also, the generation of bilingual terminology database is another important requirement which has to be standardized, benchmarked to be utilized in different activities of language technology. Here we are presenting a diagram here. We will show how the translation corpus, parallel translation corpus can be utilized to retrieve the translational equivalents from the respective languages. Bilingual lexical database is an important resource can be generated from the parallel translation corpus. So, development of a bilingual lexical database from a parallel translation corpus is an essential task, the lack of which has been one of the most important barriers in the present empty works in Indian languages. Traditional dictionaries can compensate this deficiency because they do not contain detailed information about the lexical subcategorizations, lexical selection restrictions, domains of applications of lexical items, and many other information which are required for machine translation purposes. Using a post-tagged translation corpus, we can extract exactly semantically equivalent words for a bilingual lexical database, which may be developed from untagged corpus also for the same purposes if the post-tagged version is not available. Here again, we should say that formation of a bilingual lexical database is best possible within those cognate languages that are typically or genealogically that are typologically or genealogically related. Say Bangla, Odia, Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, Malayalam, because cognate languages usually share many common properties, both linguistic and non-linguistics, which are rarely found in non-related languages. Also, there is a large chunk of regular vocabulary similar to each other, not only in phonetic and orthographic and representation, but also in sense, content, connotation, and other properties. So, development of bilingual lexical database from a parallel translation corpus is an important task. If we take two closely related sister languages as the constituents of a bilingual parallel translation corpus, we can develop a bilingual lexical database following a pause-tagged corpus. First, we can retrieve the comparable syntactic blocks, that is clauses and phrases, from the corpus, extract the content words from stylish syntactic blocks, also nouns, adjectives, and verbs, extract function words from different syntactic blocks, like pronouns, postpositions, and adverbs, select those lexical items that show similarity in form, meaning, and usage, and store them in a separate lexical database as translational equivalent forms. Since we do not expect the total similarities at morphological, lexical, syntactic, semantic, and conceptual level within any two languages, even if those languages are very closely related, similarities in form, meaning, and usage are enough for selection of translational units. Also, we need to have a bilingual term bank, scientific and technical terminologies to be extracted from the parallel translation corpus to be utilized later on in translation. Collection of scientific and technical terms from a parallel translation corpus also asks for introspective analysis of the corpus. We have to search through the parallel translation corpus to find out those terms which are equivalent or semi-equivalent in both the languages. While doing so, we need to keep various factors in mind regarding their appropriateness, grammaticality, acceptance, and usability of these terms in the target language. But the most crucial factor is their lexical generativity of the terms, so that many new forms are possible to generate by using various linguistic repertoires available in the languages. A parallel translation corpus has another role also in choice of appropriate technical terms from the list of multiple synonymous terms that try to represent the particular ideas, event, item, or concept. It is noted that the recurrent practice of forming the new terms often goes to such an extreme level that we are at loss to decide which term is to select over other candidates. Debate may also arise whether we should generate new terms or we should accept the terms already absorbed in the target language by regular use and reference. Since terms are also naturalized in the course of time in the target language, it is always better that those terms may be accounted for or collected or assembled together for the purpose. For instance, you can come across a large chunk of terms relating to the computer science or other things, modern technology like computer, mobile, calculator, telephone, tram, bus, cycle, rickshaw, train, machine, and all those terms are so much naturalized in Bangla that it is not necessary for us to coin a new term to be included in the translation corpus. The high frequency of use of those terms in various forms, in various types of texts, make them the part of the Bangla vocabulary. So there is no need to replace these terms while collecting the translational equivalents. So we have understood that a parallel translation corpus is a good resource for selection of appropriate scientific terms that present new ideas and concepts. As a translation corpus is made of varieties of texts full of new terms and expressions, it provides valuable resource of context-based example to draw sensible conclusions. So here, a parallel translation corpus has two important values, two important roles to play. First, it helps to assemble terms of the source language and the target language, along with information of dates and domains of their entry and usage in the language. Also, it supplies all possible native coinages of terms along with the information of domains and frequency of usage in both source and target language. So these factors helps us to determine on the relative acceptance or rejections of terms from the parallel translation corpus. The examination of some instances can be referred to from Hindi Bangla ILCA corpus to show that a parallel translation corpus is highly useful in collection of appropriate scientific terms which are essential elements in translation. Finally, we are going to emphasize on in brief the value of parallel translation corpus. The question is how a parallel translation corpus is being used in which domains and who are going to use it. The event of parallel translation corpus generation entails the question of its possible application in various research activities. Utility of a parallel translation corpus is not confined within machine translation only. It has equal relevance in general and applied linguistics. Each research and application of MT requires specific empirical database of source language and target language, which can be addressed from a parallel translation corpus. Also, people working in different fields of language technology require parallel translation corpus for research and development and application. Form and content of a parallel corpus are bound to vary based on the uses both in linguistics and language technology. In cases of language teaching, teachers and instructors also require a parallel translation corpus to teach the mechanism or the methods used in translation courses. People who are studying language variations in source language and target languages also need parallel translation corpus to initiate their research and investigations. Finally, lexicographers and terminographers who are developing bilingual dictionaries, multilingual dictionaries, multilingual term bank, bilingual term bank, they also need parallel translation corpus for both interlinguistic and extralinguistic data and information which are easily available from parallel translation corpus. So, to conclude, what we find that a parallel translation corpus is a very difficult task to generate. A lot of technicalities are involved into it. It's more difficult to analyze a parallel translation corpus, to structure parallel translation corpus, to align texts, to generate multilingual or bilingual lexical databases, and as well as to generate bilingual term banks. But the advantage is that once this corpus is generated, developed, and the resources are developed from a parallel translation corpus, both the corpus as well as the resources generated from the parallel translation corpus become tremendously useful in many domains of language technology, lexicography, language teaching, even in cross-lingual research and application purposes. So, we should better concentrate now to develop more domain-specific or general type of parallel translation corpora among Indian languages. Thank you.